Look, we tried this before and they're censoring it. We're talking about American sovereignty, okay, and they label it medical misinformation. Here we are. I'm with Diane Kazer, okay, a pro soccer player, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, health and beauty expert, and author of Killer Breasts, and a state national. Okay, we're going to go over Saba, what that is. We're also joined with Dennis Knill. He's Justice of the State of Arizona, Sheriff of Papaya County, Chairman, Recorder, Coordinator for the Arizona State Assembly, and Michelle Ford. Michelle Ford, mother of four, founder of and president of Vaccine Injury Awareness League, now an activist, teaching common law strategies. The reason I'm giggling is because if you're just joining us, if you're just starting on episode 11, episode 10 was just censored by the powers that be, the Ministry of Truth, for medical misinformation. Okay, we're talking about getting your rights back so that if you were under the delusion that you had protection by the Constitution, freedom of speech, press, assembly, freedom of travel, freedom of commerce, okay, and now the last 18 months has broken those dreams or that delusion. Okay, we're going to teach how to get it back. Okay, welcome everyone. I mean, just for a backstory, we were talking, okay, for like 10 minutes. And I was going, we got to get this recorded. We got to get this recorded. Okay, people got to know, because you guys are into it so much more. I mean, I'm going to get my, I was short my birth certificate, but I've got everything stamped, notarized, everything, blah, blah, blah. So my birth certificate comes in this week, then I am going to get the patent, the land patent. I'm going to be there, okay? I'll have my card. Now, can you all describe the difference between, because there's a lot of groups like this, kind of, and I heard a little bit, they're kind of like militia groups, some of them, how other groups out there are fighting the current system, and how simply status correction is the ultimate solution instead. Okay, so instead of fighting the system, correcting your status. Do you guys, any comments on that? Michelle?
I would love to talk about that because it's so important. There are a lot of people that are working towards freedom and trying to do it right and trying to, bring us forward in this conversation instead of being, lumped into some FEMA camp down the street for not doing, what. But here's the thing. There are 4 pillars that are required in order to fully assemble. And so you need a business assembly, you need a general assembly, you need a jural assembly, and you need a militia peacekeeping task force. And as far as I know, the American States Assembly, we are the only assembly that are actively working on all 4 pillars at the same time. Many, many, many people have tried to do status correction on their own and not assemble. And what's beautiful about assembly is then we finally have access to juries of our peers. And I remind you, we don't need a majority, we just need enough. And enough looks like 75 properly status corrected men and or women on 2/3 of the counties of each state. And it's a very doable goal, Dr. B.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's 75.
75. That's the minimum number that we're looking for. And you know what? Here on California, we have like 58 or 59 counties. It's like 2,900 people that are properly status corrected. We can so do it. What was that?
How are we doing with that as far as California and Arizona, which is what all of us on the call today represent, as well as the other states? Do you know?
So California, right now we have about 700 approximately that are papered. And we have about 400-ish in the pipeline. So once those people finally get all papered up, we're going to be just over 1,100. So we're, halfway, a little less than halfway. Actually, I guess that's more like a third.
So at our practice, we see a little bit over 200, 250 people a day. We're going to do this once a month.
How do you do that?
The week before, We're going to have all the paperwork, what needs to be done. We're going to have a checklist that they've gotten all the papers out there. Then we're going to have recorders there 1 day a month. So we're going to be generating probably 50, maybe 100 people a month, maybe more. Okay.
Gosh,
so
Orange County is about to have a massive explosion. So I hope that what happens is people who are fans of your show from other counties take advantage of this opportunity and drive down to Orange County, because otherwise Orange County is going to be like Texas, like this awesomely populated, amazing county on California, but we need more counties.
Encourage any business owner. Okay. By the end of next week, we're going to have all the paperwork, the checklists, everything else. And you can do it in any business. Just, you need like a week to get all the papers together, go to the sites, copy it, get your birth certificate, and then we'll get a recorder over to your business. So we got to start doing this. We're going to take it back. If not, if you don't take charge of your life, someone else will.
That's right.
And they already have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. Okay. What terms and language are most essential for us to know? Because I just learned that the word sovereignty. Okay, is that okay, or should we call ourselves something else?
American nationals.
American national. So what's the difference between American sovereign and American national?
Okay, a lot of people consider themselves as sovereign citizens. Okay, that's actually an oxymoron. It doesn't even exist. Because citizens are U.S. citizens and sovereigns are sovereigns, or they think they're sovereign because they're out of the system or they're off the grid or whatever. You have to change your they call it political status. And what it is you're taking yourself out of the maritime jurisdiction and coming back to the land and soil, because you become owners of the Pope and the Queen at birth, whether you know it or not. And that's why we need a copy of the birth certificate. It's bond paper, or they have placed a bond on you, converting you to British territorial subjects. So you actually belong to the Queen and the Pope.
Now, when you change your status to the land and soil, is there like a term for that? What is it? Instead of sovereign, I know American state national, or California state national, or Arizona state national, but what's the thing with the land and soil?
The land and soil is that there's several different jurisdictions. There's the air jurisdiction, there's the sea jurisdiction, which is the maritime, and there's the land jurisdiction, and there's one more. What's the other one?
Well, it's land, air, and water. So
land, air, and water. So I basically had it right. So but the air belongs to, I believe it's the Pope, and the water belongs to the Queen, and the land belongs to the people. The people own the land. Okay, the 6 inches of topsoil and the land down below. So when you're on the land and soil, you are completely international, because the whole globe is on land. Even the water's on the land. But when you're on the water, your inland waterways and the oceans, you belong to the Queen. It's a different jurisdiction. So being on the land and soil, you are international, but you have the most power in your state, because each state is its own nation. So you become a Californian, or an Arizonan, or a Wisconsinite, or a Texan, or whatever when you change your status. And when you do the paperwork, you're pulling yourself out of the sea jurisdiction back to the land, because you're expatriating from the other jurisdiction. And the people on the land and the soil own everything. Then the Pope and the Queen become subcontractors. They're supposed to be taking care of the mess that's going on, because the military and so on are subcontractors of the Pope and the Queen.
Now, what's the difference between national and nationalist? And I know, like, citizens with a capital, lowercase, or what's the difference?
Michelle, did you want to answer that? I didn't want to cut anybody off.
Yeah, and Diane too. I want to make sure Diane gets a word in edgewise. Do you want to take this one, Diane? If not,
no. I actually, before we got into that, I just wanted to clarify something with Dennis, because I'm good with clarifying questions for the people listening. Like, wait a second, people can't go past that question sometimes to the next when they're stuck on something.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm really good at. I'm not as well versed as Dennis and Michelle, but Dennis, so you explained something about the Pope and the Queen. Their area, we talked about this with Anna too, that their territories are the water and the air. Now, does that mean that when we fly or board a ship, then we lose our rights and freedom as an American national? Just to clarify.
Michelle, did you want to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, no, you don't lose your status as an American national or a Californian or an Arizonan or whatever. But what you do is you get the protection of the Queen when you're on those waterways. So her jurisdiction, protection, right? But here's the other thing about the jurisdictions is jurisdictions, although they are physical, like the land, the air, the water, when you're in an airplane, you're obviously in the air. When you're in the water, you're obviously on the water. But jurisdictions also exist in here and on paper. And so certain contracts and agreements exist in different jurisdictions. So, for example, because we domicile on the land. In other words, we don't swim full time and we don't fly full time, right? Like with wings, we don't have wings and we don't have gills. We still enter into certain contracts. For example, when we get into an employment contract, that employment contract is a water jurisdiction contract. If we declare a trust, that's in the air jurisdiction. So it's not only physical and territorial. And I want to make sure that we set that precedent because a lot of it is right up in here. I might get married, let's say, well, not me, but those days are long gone. But let's say somebody gets married, right? They have a verbal contract. It's a contract, right? But if you're not with your spouse at that moment, you're still married, whether or not you're in a physical proximity with that man or woman, right? You're married up here and you're married in your heart. And there's things that exist like that where it's kind of nebulous, but it makes a difference. Trusts are in the air, religions are in the air, creative ideas, people who write manuscripts or come up with art or whatever, all of those are in the air. And then other contracts that are on paper, like real estate contracts or employment contracts or contracts that you have by virtue of being sold out to the birth certificate program, all of the water. So people are of the water because of contracts that exist both on paper and by virtue of us being subjects of the Queen and the Pope. So I wanted to make sure that we clarified that.
Okay, so once you have the land and soil, okay, then we're and I've used the term in the past, sovereign citizen, where we're responsible for ourselves and we're protected by the Constitution. Now I'm not going to use sovereign anymore. I'm going to use California State National because I am physically in California.
On California, yes.
On California soil. Okay, so but if I'm if I run into trouble in the ocean because I sail a lot, okay, if would it be a different court system or maritime law versus, because maritime law that's been like forever. We've got certain distances we have to stay away from the coast. Once you get beyond a certain distance, there's a whole different rule of laws. So that makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. Right. So when you're describing that there's air law and this law and that law, hell, I'm a sailor. That's, you get beyond so many miles depending on the coast, because some people have, 20 miles, some people 6 miles, some people 100 miles. It depends on activities that you can do in that range.
Yeah, and people who fly. And people who fly, it's like being in a prison in the sky.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you violate that, like my friend Robin Openshaw, Green Smoothie Girl, there has been a lot of press on this. She got kicked off of a plane because their mask was underneath her nose a little bit. And it became this big legal battle, a huge legal issue where, no-fly list and then people threatening to sue, of course, the airline companies. So to your point, John, I do wonder about that. If there is an issue, and there is an airline that wants to say, oh, well, you didn't follow our federal law protocol, even though it's not a federal law, but they say it when you're on the airplane. And I've heard that they flip-flop the story on there. So if somebody does get sued by, say, an airline company, is it a different jurisdiction? Is it under maritime, or what, like John was saying too? Or if John's sailing, then and he commits some kind of something else, is he able to say, okay, here's my American National card? Or does he have to stand up for himself, and it goes to a different court system for him being an American National?
Right.
Sorry to your question, John. I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, when you're on the sea, when John's out sailing and so on, he's under the protection of the Queen. The Queen and the Pope are subcontractors. They have those treaties and those jurisdictions to protect the people when they're on the sea. See, the people own everything. They own all the charters. They own all of the corporations, all the businesses. The United States Inc., the United States of America Inc., and United States Inc., where Biden's president, no longer exists. It's been liquidated.
Okay,
and
so
that's where I'm sorry.
When you said subcontractor, that makes all the sense in the world. So the people own themselves. So
Correct.
I'm responsible whether I'm in the air, the ocean, anywhere. When I'm on the ocean, I've got a subcontractor that's working for me.
Correct.
Okay, that should be doing this. Except in our mind, the Queen is up here and we're servants.
Yeah,
but once we change our status, we are the ones that are in charge of ourselves, our land, our God-given rights. So we got God above us.
And our subcontractors, but they're not listening.
Bitch. Okay. God, that makes all the sense in the world.
Well, but the reason they're not listening is because people are not properly status corrected. They are owned by contract. They're owned by the subcontractors. They're owned by these corporate contracts known as USA Inc. or US Inc. Right? So when you're owned, you get to be bossed around.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And when you go against them, you're considered a terrorist because you're in the sea jurisdiction going against the sea corporations. So they basically own you. And so when you change your status, you're getting out of their jurisdiction onto the land to become the owners of the land. And all of these others are subcontractors. They're there to protect the owners, the employers, who we are. They're our employees. They're supposed to be working for us, and they don't because of the birth certificate.
Fantastic.
That's why we're changing out of that and going onto the land and soil to become the true owners of the planet like we're supposed to be, where we have all of our God-given rights.
Excellent. Okay. Now, since you're talking about bankruptcy, and I know you're not talking about the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars they keep printing, which is supposed to be it's going to tax our savings and everything else. Can you give a better understanding of the 14th Amendment and how it's upholding the U.S. debt? I mean, this doesn't make any sense. I'm looking at this question that was written by a person a hell of a lot smarter than me. But how is the 14th Amendment correlating with the U.S. debt? Please, anybody.
So the 14th Amendment, remember back in school when we learned all about Honest Abe, right? President Lincoln, and listen, I mean, no disrespect to Honest Abe, right? Because he probably was a really great guy with a bunch of handlers. He was also the country's first bar attorney president. So the bar, being the British accreditation registry, right? Bar attorneys have to pledge their oath and their allegiance to the bar, the British. So unbeknownst to him, he was ushering in this program called equality, right? He sure did make everybody equal when he brought in that birth certificate program, the citizenship program. And citizenship redefined we the people from people to citizens, which are corporate debt slaves. And corporate debt slaves are also known as the taxpayers, right? Taxpayers. And who is responsible for creating the taxes? It's the politicians who pass the bills. Bills are literal. And once our very slick salespeople known as politicians pass these bills and get the governors of each state to sign these bills, and not only that, but even at the federal level, it happens way up high at the federal level. And it also happens in your backyard at your school board and at your city council and at your county board of supervisors. These people are passing along debt instruments that the citizens, aka taxpayers, are responsible for paying, whether or not they agree with these bills, because it's a majority rule situation. And a lot of bills actually are passed without even coming to we the people, without going to the voters, right? Voters are actually not part of we the people, at least in the sense that we're talking about, because, we haven't fully assembled yet. Obviously, we will be having opportunities to vote once we're assembled. But in the current paradigm and the current political situation that we see, the left, right, constantly going back and forth between, we had a Republican president, and then we had a Democrat president, and then it's going to go back to Republican president, and then it's going to go back to Democrat. It's like this it's either 4 years or 8 years. And history tells us that the pendulum swings back and forth, back and forth. And as long as we're focusing on the back and forth, as long as we're focusing on anything other than what's really going on here, which is we got misclassified, we'll never figure it out. And that's what they've been counting on for the last several thousand years. Because our founding fathers were escaping this tyranny. They did not want us to be stuck into a debt slavery system. In fact, they threw tea into the harbor going, no way, no, how are we paying your stupid tax? And now we're at the point where people will defend their taxation and their servitude and get self-righteous about it. What about the roads?
We talked about that with Anna. That's actually what, I don't know if you heard that, but that was actually what I brought up when we had our call with Anna, which is was it 9, Dr. B? Episode 8 or 9 of the series. And that's what people think. But yet she said that 98% of when they did an assessment of the funds that we've been paying in taxes righteously, responsibly, and morally, didn't even go abroad where it was supposed to go. 98% didn't go. So if you guys haven't seen that episode with Anna, go listen to that, because I asked those questions, because what we think and what we believe, like Michelle was saying, is the very first prison bar that you have to overcome is that you quite possibly have been lied to about many things, most things your entire life.
Yeah, for 160 years, we've been lied to. So everybody that's on the planet now, unless you have a 160-year-old that knows what happened back then, we've all been living a lie, and we're finding out about this lie, and it's time to change it, because we all know it's corrupt, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse every day. Okay, so it's time to change it. It's time to be free people again on the land and soil, so everybody can have fun, everybody can enjoy life, everybody. And the trillions of dollars of debt, do you know who that's owed to? They say your children and your grandchildren and their grandchildren are going to be paying off the debt, all the way down. That money belongs to us. We are owed that money, the people of the land and soil.
Very cool. And when you're looking at this, because like from an average Joe, somebody that doesn't, just think the government is all this powerful entity. Okay, they work for us by the consent of the governed. Okay, and we're supposed to have representatives that represent the majority of the votes in their county. And when we take our country back, okay, they are, but it's not unlimited. They can't just keep printing money for the hell of it.
That's what they're doing.
You gotta, every human being has to balance their budget. You got so much income and you got so many expenses. The government has to be held to fiscal responsibility. Otherwise they're fired.
Exactly. They're fired, each and every one of them.
Well, and notice how they always talk about the debt, right? They always talk about the debt, just like, they always talk about, actually, I'm not going to say the V word. It might get censored. Forget it. I was going to say something. But they never talk about the credit. Have you ever noticed that? They only ever talk about the debt and the deficit. They never talk about the credit.
Okay, when Wilson sold us out for the Federal Reserve, okay, so you got a group of bankers that isn't federal and they're not the Reserve, okay, they're
Right.
just printing money, and then they charge us for the money they're printing, okay,
Right.
I mean it's ridiculous, okay, I'm talking about just fiat currency, it's just paper. Now, so when we're talking debt, where's the credit? Because it's got a balance on the sheet. So when we're printing this money, what kind of assets are we getting for it? Or where's the asset? Where's the credit portion? So can you explain that debt credit money system? What does it mean?
Jeff, you want?
Yeah. So here's the thing. All roads lead to Rome. Repeat after me.
All roads lead to Rome.
All roads lead to Rome. Okay. So way back in history. Okay. We're talking about like Black Plague and there was a huge fire in England, right? This is when this trust was born. I think it was 1665 or 1666, right? What they decided to do was put all of the property of all of these suddenly deceased people into this trust. Okay. And what do we know about a trust? There's a trustee, a trustor, and a beneficiary. There's always three parties to every trust. The trustee is the Pope. The papacy, the seat of the Pope, is the trustee of the trust. Now we're talking about generational wealth that has been being stolen because of the citizenship program. The citizenship program was not born here on America. It's just that our founding fathers were the first people to challenge that program and say, we're not doing that. We're forming a whole new government. We're forming a government of the people, a republic, where even the smallest minority of one is going to have their rights protected, right? So this trust situation got out of hand because what they found is that with every death, right? Think probate, think how the assets have to be accounted for, and then the government gets their nice big chunk. Well, all of that ends up going into the hands of the Pope, who then distributes based on good little citizens, right? So these social welfare programs and all of this other stuff is like the breadcrumbs that come back in the form of like community credit. But the fact of the matter is all of these people are misclassified as citizens, lost at sea, and the trustee, who, by the way, is on notice, thanks to Anna, the trustee is now aware that the people are not happy and that we've come to roost, so to speak. The roosters have come to roost, and we are ready to claim what was rightfully belonging to us and to our heirs. Think about it. You're alive and well right now because how many people in your direct lineage were alive and well before you? Think about it.
Thousands of generations. Yeah.
Thousands upon thousands. So this 1666 Sesta Trust, by the way, there was an earlier trust under like Benedictus or something. I forget who it was, but this whole thing started at like in 1100, I think it was, and when you start to really realize that these, sort of globalist, agendized secret societies, what they've been doing all these years is they've been perpetuating global disasters. They've been perpetuating pestilence. They've been perpetuating plagues and pandemics and fires and da-da-da-da. Why? Because they don't want to have to pay out. That's why. That's the bottom line. There's a ton of money sitting there.
I wanted to share something about that. Dr. B, did you have something first?
No. I was going to ask questions. Please share, because
okay.
Yeah,
there's I'll reference this too. I do probably about 8 hours of research every day on various things on, using the S word, sovereignty, in every facet of our life. And I found there's a guy on YouTube, it's called Iconic Podcast, Jeremy Elliott, and he had a series called Communist Subversion. And in that, he talked about federal spending and where our taxpayer dollars go. And why does it get so inflated? Why does it appear as though so much of our money is going to war when more people, more troops have been pulled home? Like, where is the war really happening? And so what I learned in several of his points in that is that they're inflating the expenses of various things. Like one guy, one of the leaders somewhere in the military, standard vehicle would be like $50,000 for what it was, an SUV of some kind. And what they wrote on the books is that it was $250,000. And a bag of, let's say, clothing to take to your dry cleaners would typically be somewhere like maybe $10. They're inflating it up to hundreds of dollars. And so what they're doing is they're manually inflating how much they're spending. Why? Because the more they have this upside down theory that with our taxpayers' dollar, the more they inflate and charge us, the more money they actually can print and get in return. And that's how they have grown their, what Michelle is saying, that's how they've grown this credit, but yet don't talk about it because there's so much fraud behind it. So I'll give you some of the stats from 2018, which, where does our taxpayer dollars go? I find it so interesting how few people will sit down and go, hey, I'm going to donate $1,000 to you, IRS. Where is that money going? What are you using it for? And we've seen this in several other institutions like Susan B., I'm not going to say the last name, just in case, and 90-something% is not going to what we think it's going. It's going to fill the pockets of the people who are running these things. It's fraud. So of the 4.1 trillion in 2018, 1.3 trillion went to discretionary spending for the defense, military, education, transportation, and health. 2.5, which is 61%, 2.5 trillion went to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and veteran benefits. It's mandatory spending. And then 8% of it, which is 325 billion, goes to the interest on national debt. So now when we're looking at the spending that's going toward Medicare, the spending toward going to these big, huge buckets of money that are paying people $2,000 of money, $2,000 a month of money to just sit home and do nothing for 2 years. Now compound that interest on what it's costing us. Are you guys really still willing to continue to pay taxes and instead of going sovereign to this kind of a corrupt system? I think we really need, the jig is up. There's so much fraud in it. Why are we still paying like good girls and good boys into a system that is this corrupt?
There is a saying, okay, back in the 80s, okay, you're probably too young to remember this. they had some oversight committees. And the biggest thing that I saw, it was like a $500 hammer and a $400 toilet seat for a B-1 bomber. And the guy said, look, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. And it's like, dude, at the time, I'm making like 50, 60 grand a year. And it was just like hard. I mean, it is. There is no oversight because who wants to look into that? Who's going to pay for it? Like I was reading this book on the way down about DMSO, and what company is going to do a study on a product that's super cheap, that's super effective? There's going to be a wall to not let this healthy stuff get. But I mean, we all hear stories in the natural health world.
Was that by Amanda Vollmer, Dr. V?
Yeah, it is. It is really good.
Yeah, we've interviewed her. We got a partner with her in our membership group. She's awesome.
Okay, yeah, this is fun stuff. Yeah, I'm going to be incorporating that into autistic and brain damaged kids.
Awesome.
Wow.
Okay, now can you please help clarify financial terms? Debt note, fiat currency, and CUSIP. What's that?
The CUSIP number.
CUSIP number? What's that? What's that?
So, okay, so on your birth certificate, there's a number. This is also known as your CUSIP number, and all stocks and bonds have a CUSIP number. So I don't know if you know this or not, but your bond, your birth certificate, Dennis talked about it a little bit earlier. Your bond is, your birth certificate is a bond. So your birth certificate has a dollar value. And, based on some of the research that I've done, have you ever heard that saying, it's worth its weight in gold?
Yes.
right? It's worth its weight in gold. Do you know where they got that from?
I think Solomon Way and his wives or something.
Well, get this. So when a baby is born, part of the trust agreement is that birthright. You've heard the term birthright before, right? Okay, so when a baby is born, it's weighed because they have to set aside its weight in gold. Okay, so if a baby is 8 pounds, they get 8 pounds worth of gold when they're born. However, they're free little people up until the day that their birth certificate application gets registered with the registrar's office. And then that gold, just lo and behold, miraculously gets put right into the trust under the guise of the Pope. So everyone is born with birthright, but somehow they just almost never seem to get a hold of it. So the job of a trustee is to make sure that nothing happens to the assets in the trust, namely the gold, right? So if there's 300, how many Americans are there now? What is it? Not Americans, but citizens.
350 million something.
350 million. Okay. Which I think is a total inflation, a total lie, by the way. We can go down that road in a minute if you want. But anyway, so let's just pretend that there's actually 350 million, actual people on this land. Okay. That all have their weight in gold sitting in the basement or whatever, the coffers of the Vatican. And that has been growing in value and increasing in value because gold inherently increases in value over time, right? What would that be worth today if you were born in 1960 or 1970 or whenever you were born, Dr. B? And then apparently after 1974, not only is there the weight in gold, but there's also $1 million bond placed on the life of the infant. $1 million if you were born after 1974. And that money is just sitting there. And it's sitting there waiting to be claimed. Now, to answer your other question, what is fiat currency? So fiat currency is essentially fake money, might as well be monopoly money. It's money that we agree has a certain value, right? So if you and I had a card and we agreed that if it had a certain number on it, it had a certain dollar value, then it's worth something because we say so. And that's really what fiat currency is. So the Federal Reserve, when they took over, they had all of the people in 1930. Well, the Federal Reserve was founded in 1913. However, 1933 is when all of the gold and all of the silver got taken by the government. Right here on America, all of these people that were citizens, okay, were told that they had to turn in all of their wealth. And it was because of the country going broke, and it was because of the war effort, and it was doing your part to pay the debt, right? So all of the gold, all of these innocent people thinking that they were doing the right thing, gave over all of their familial wealth over to the government. And in exchange for that deposit was supposed to be that their bills got paid, right? The government said, don't worry, if you hand over all of your wealth, we're going to take it and we're going to redistribute it and make sure that no one goes hungry. Well, what are you seeing today, Dr. B? What are you seeing today? Are you seeing that people's bills are being paid? Technically, because of COVID, yes, a lot of bills are being paid, but that's not the point that I'm making. There's a lot of people that are facing homelessness. They're one paycheck away from losing their house. People are losing their jobs. They're in distress. They're really, really in distress over the possibility of having to be forcibly vaccinated in exchange, as a coercion for their paycheck, right? And at the end of the day, there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars that is unclaimed property. Why? Because the beneficiaries of the trust have not gone knocking on the door of the trustees saying, hey, I'm alive and well. And I don't want your fiat currency anymore. I want lawful money. I want the lawful money that was promised to me when I was born. That's what I want. And as part of the papering up process and getting people properly status corrected, our common law banks are forming and Americans are claiming their birthright.
Okay. So where is the cash, gold, assets stored?
It's all in Rome. That's why I said all roads lead to Rome. Repeat after me. All roads lead to Rome.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And another thing, if you listen to Anna's call on Monday, she also said that there is no such thing as probate court in America.
Yeah, let that sink in.
Every time somebody dies, where does it go? Probate court. Who does the probate court work for? The government. So they seize all the assets, all the property, everything, and they put it into their coffers. Those coffers belong to the families of those people, all of it. So it's all another fraud. So like I said, we've been lied to for 160 years, and they just keep raping and pillaging us until we've had enough. So America, have you had enough?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking, I mean, just a cursory thing on the infrastructure bill and nothing's going to infrastructure, or the COVID bill and nothing's going to COVID, 1%, 5%. I mean, people got to wake up. And I mean, paying taxes, they're printing money. This means whatever asset our money was based on, if you print more money, it's worth less. That means if you have $5,000 in the bank 2 years ago, it ain't worth $5,000.
No.
I mean, people got to start waking up. The whole banking system, when we get our sovereign status, when we get our actual banks, can we petition Rome, or how do we get the cash in our banks that of the assets that we paid in?
That's already being worked on.
Okay, cool.
It's already being worked on. They're in the process of transferring all of it. Do you know that they found below the Vatican, what was it, 150 miles long by I think 50 feet wide, and I think 50 feet high of gold. 150 miles long under the Vatican. And I think that's short ranging it. I think it was much longer and much wider than that.
Yeah, so he's been a great trustor, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's been a great trustee, making sure that he accumulated all the wealth. So
so we can all survive, and live peaceably and healthy and wealthy and wise.
Oh, you guys, if you want more about what Dennis is talking about, how this is actually taking place, there was a webinar that Anna von Reitz did on Monday. What would that be? August 9th?
It was the 9th, yeah.
The 9th. And we'll put that link below for all of you guys so that you can listen to that, because we're just now starting to get our accounts receivable into order.
Okay, we're going to be running over in a couple of minutes. Okay, just that when we're talking about sovereign or getting your status changing from a slave into an independent human being that has rights that are protected by God, about assets and money and fiat currency, it might seem overwhelming, but just look at basic stuff. Do you agree with what the government's doing? Do you think the government now is of the people, by the people, for the people? Do you think that our population is healthy, wealthy, wise, living in harmony with the world, or is it absolute frigging chaos? The people that are running this shit now are responsible for the outcome now. Okay, so we're this whole movement is to take our world back. Okay, now, I mean, I'm at my business, we're setting it up to where people can start changing their status. Every time, I mean, honestly, God, anytime Michelle, Dennis, or Diane say something, I write a note and I look it up. It's like, is this really true? And it is. It really is. So please, I mean, look at all the links below. Now, just for parting words, Diane, what would you say to people to motivate them, aside from looking at everything that's going on?
Yeah, I know. And today I messaged Michelle like, oh, I can't handle this anymore. Three this week alone, concerned mothers who are sending me messages about their ex-spouse who is taken into court. So the kid, their child is being forced to do all the things. And it's, in the mother's perspective, endangering the child, and really the way that she can be above the civil law is to go sovereign and become an American national, because we have a completely different understand versus overstand relationship. And even when I bring this up about the possibility of being one of their last resorts, like how much money do you need to pay to these court systems and to the fraudulent judges and to the lawyers who are going to, for the most part, serve this diseased legal system that is underneath the government, that is underneath the Pope and the Queen. Like how much more abuse do we need to see? That all of these cases, I have not seen one win. Most all of these cases go to get the things. And so the child is now in the abusive system. Like how much more trauma do you have to endure? And I was in tears before we got on this webinar. It's so hard for me to see this happen to my people. And that's why I show up every single day, because it's hard for me to see these children crying, going into the hospital, being forced to do these things they don't want to do. And I personally know somebody who's had to have 10 surgeries in a matter of 2 weeks. And he was a 21-year-old athlete and took it. And is now, who knows who's going to pay for his bills? Who's going to stand for him? We don't know. We don't know the answers to all of these questions that people are not even asking. And you won't know until you ask. And you won't know what freedom really is and how much you want it until you lose it, until you realize that you've always been a slave to the system, like we all are. So I beg of you guys, please stop thinking that our handlers are going to change their mind. Their mind is made up and they are serving two people, and that is it. So we will continue to lose our freedom. We will continue to feel defeated, to become apathetic, and to lose our health, trying to convince these people of another way, and rather look at another system that has always been there. And it is the true path to freedom. You don't have to convince anybody. You don't have to expect or think that they're just all of a sudden going to have empathy when they've not been programmed to. So I just don't know what your limit is. Only you know that. But please, when you reach that limit, reach out to people who you know have gone through the process of going sovereign, and you're not alone. Please stop being silent. That is one of the things that will kill us.
Yeah, forced medical procedure without informed consent. Diane, I mean, I've had about a month and a half ago, we had this family come from Ohio. They're adopting these 3 kids, and the 3 kids, I mean, they just so much love in this family. But 2 of the kids already had negative vaccine reactions. For the adoption papers to go through, they have to have forced medical procedures without them consenting. Otherwise, the adoption doesn't go through. So what do we do? You know, I mean, we're talking mothers on welfare that have to get their kids shot up. Otherwise, they lose their benefits. I mean, this is criminal. If you think this is fair, if this is right, that our handlers, the way you put it, are doing a great bang up job, and you're not smart enough to think for yourself, okay? Or if you think there's a better way, if you think that you, through your research, you being an independent thinking individual, can decide for yourself what's good for you and that's going to add to your life, man, this is it. Dennis, what parting words do you have, brother?
Okay.
Oh my God.
Cannot wait for the catastrophe to hit your life. You have to stop it now. You have to get up off the couch. Quit watching the boob tube. There's nothing on there but sex, crime, war. Get away from the TV. Do you know that the Amish people have no COVID because they don't have TVs? Okay? That's the kind of crap they're giving you. And you're going to see it every day. And until you wake up and it hits home, then maybe it'll change your mind. But you have to stop it now.
bless you. Oh my God. Thank you, Lord, for these people. Michelle.
I know. How do you follow up after
Just
that?
Just say ditto.
I was talking to Diane and my heart is warmed. Oh my God.
Maybe you cry. I mean, it's okay to cry too. It's just like, we have to feel this stuff.
So I really want to touch on what Diane said about these families that are split up, because, I'm a divorcee, right? And I'm so blessed. If my ex-husband ever sees this, I am so blessed to have him in my life, because he saw me doing my homework. And so he didn't challenge what I wanted, because he knew that I knew, right? But I'm one of the very lucky ones. And what I want to say to families out there that are experiencing or have already experienced divorce and you're co-parenting, if you can muster it within your heart to reach across the table and say, listen, I am not your enemy. You are not my enemy. We brought these beautiful children into the world and we have to protect them from the real enemy. And we have to do it together. Can we talk? And then if you need a mediator, I will help to talk for you, with you, by your side. This is ridiculous that we have so many families suffering, and who's really suffering are the children. And there's this quote from Winston Churchill that I would like to read. And this is really to Dennis's point. Winston Churchill said, "Still, if you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it's better to perish than to live as a slave."
Amen. Oh,
Vladimir Putin said, "A nation that cannot protect its children has no future."
Yep. And our kids now, they're not going to outlive their parents. That's the statistics. God bless you all. Okay. I mean, this is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We can go back to it. It's ours.
Yep.
Do the research. Okay. And when we set up at our office to change your status, it's not just for our patients. It's for everybody. And we're going to be doing this every month until we take back our world.
Thank you, Dr. B.
And remember, you're not sovereign unless you also have a land patent. So we can't just throw that word around. Be careful.
We're going to have I'm going to be land patent state national. California state national. Yeah, that's the right term. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you're an American national. You're a man, Dr. B. You are a man.
Good.
He-Man. He's a he-man.
I tell my sweetheart that I'm just a normal guy.
No, that was something that I thought when Dennis was speaking, is that this is the true going back to normal. Going back to what others think that is the normal is the big lie. The liberty is the true going back to normal.
The episode that was deleted, we talked about the thick red line. And evidently that's medical, but it's actually literally changing the laws. No harm, no foul. You live by the Big Ten. You don't steal, hurt. Just thank you all. Okay, we got, and stay tuned for next episode. But please do the research, make the effort, because now the battle can be won.
Yes,
it can, peaceably. We can do this.
God bless you all. See you later.
You too. Thanks.
If you can hear my voice, you are part of the resistance.